Hey everyone, Lewis aka Spiderman 1991 here with my weekly comic book review. These comics came out August 8th, 2018, and as usual, the order is from worst to best. Let's get started. First on the list is Amazing Spider-Man, Renew Your Vows, number 22. Spider Family investigates Oscorp and they fight some more spider creatures. However, it turns out Annie's doppelganger is not a clone of her. And when they find Normie, he states that Sinister took a bunch of the spider creatures to attack the X-Mansion. By this point in the story, I am done. I think there's only one part left, and I think I'm just going to get the ending of it just to finish this arc, and after that, I am dropping Renew Your Vow. This title was so great. I liked it when it was a miniseries during Secret Wars, and I liked it when it came back for like maybe the first year, but then when they did the time jump and Annie was suddenly in high school, that's where the series just started to fell off for me. And to be honest, it just feels like a knockoff of Spider-Girl. So, or at least that's what the time jump did, and I feel like at this point I'm done with reading it, and I think if you are a Spider-Man fan and you've been curious about Renew Your Vows, I say just read it up until the time jump, which is just the first 12 issues. That's the only part of the series you need to read. Other than that, you can just skip the rest. Titans, number 24. The Titans investigate another totality site where fantasy characters come to life. While the team forces the invaders to retreat, one of them remains and apparently switches places with Raven. Yeah, I'm not really a big fan of this whole fantasy genre combining into like modern superheroes. It's not that great. Also, we're not really focusing so much on the Titans as a team, and there really isn't much character development except for maybe Miss Martian, who we see still talking to John Jones about the secret she's keeping. We all assume probably from Young Justice and her pre-New 52 appearances that maybe it's her identity as a White Martian, but you know, right now Titans just not that interesting. I'm still gonna hold on to it a little bit longer. Hopefully it changes because it does have a very cool Young Justice vibe to it, but this issue just didn't excite me. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, number 50. The Green Lantern Corps defeats the Dark Stars and launches a number of new rings throughout the universe. And I love the way that Hal Jordan pretty much destroys all of the Dark Star's armor by fueling his willpower into the controller's device that pretty much led to all of the Dark Star armor, which disabled them all. I think that's a very nice callback to the way Robert Venditti ended his first arc on this title, which was when Hal pretty much fought Sinestro when he was possessed by Parallax. One thing that I did love about this arc, though, is how Robert Venditti wrote John Stewart. He really writes John as a leader, and he shows like why John Stewart, not Hal Jordan, is probably the best leader for the Green Lantern Corps. I will say this though, on the drawback side, Tomar 2's death did feel a little predictable, and you know, once the fighting stops, that's when the issue really slows down. And to be honest, the fight, the pretty much lead up to the final battle, where we just have like every single like guest character that Robert Venditti used in his series come back, just felt very much like a child mashing their action figures together. So I don't know, it had some cool moments in it, but overall I just think this final arc felt very average. Supergirl, number 21. Supergirl decides to leave Earth and solve the mystery of whether Rogol Zar actually attacked Krypton and who possibly hired him to do so. Although this issue is very new reader friendly, I felt like there wasn't really much relating to the past 20 issues of Supergirl, so I could just dive right into it. It really didn't feel like a very strong opening in a way. It just felt very generic about why Kara's leaving and you know, her motivations and everything, and the setup to it just felt pretty step by step. And oh, by the way, the new costume that's on the cover, Kara does not wear it in this issue. Also, I will say though, this issue does have a really great moment when Kara has to explain why she's leaving to her cousin Superman, especially because Superman still has no idea where Lois and his son John are, so naturally he's a little hesitant to let Kara go, but he offers her crypto and says that, you know, take crypto to keep you company, and he writes her a really heartfelt letter, which was nice. But honestly, if you want to start reading this for because of Bendis' new status quo with the superhero books, because this does directly link to Man of Steel, and if you liked the new Man of Steel title, then I'd say pick this up. Otherwise, you can just skip it. Okay, and speaking of the new status quo, Superman number 2. Superman deals with the problems Earth faces while being in the Phantom Zone. Meanwhile, Rogol Zaar starts building an army of Krypton's greatest threats because he's also in the Phantom Zone as a result of the Man of Steel miniseries. This issue is pretty much a perfect example of a Brian Michael Bendis comic. There is some awesome dialogue, especially in Superman and Superman's thought caption boxes, because I will say this, the thing that, in case you're wondering what keeps me coming back to Brian Michael Bendis' Superman, it's the way he writes him. I seriously love the way he writes him. He writes him very real, very human. But the problem is, sometimes though, the issues do not move the plot along very much. And we barely know anything about Rogol Zaar. I will say this though, he does have a cool moment where while in the Phantom Zone, he discovers Nuclear Man. And if you don't know who Nuclear Man is, just Wikipedia Superman 4 Quest for Peace. Seriously, just Wikipedia. Don't watch the movie, it's awful. Just Wikipedia it and you'll understand. And of course, Rogol Zaar makes quick work of Nuclear Man, which I somehow found very enjoyable. But nevertheless, Superman, this issue does have some cool dialogue, but it still doesn't really move the plot along, doesn't reveal anything about Rogol Zaar, so I still say this is pretty average. Flash, number 52. Flash teams up with Commander Cole to investigate the other forces that were released when the Force Barrier was destroyed during Flash War. Unfortunately, the first force they find, the Strength Force, has bonded with the Trickster. This issue has a great opening sequence where we see the Flash visit the House of Heroes, which, if you haven't read Grant Morrison's Multiversity series, it's basically the center of the multiverse where heroes from other Earths can meet, and Flash calls in every speedster from the multiverse to find out if they know anything about the other forces. Also, the use of the other forces pretty much continues Joshua Williamson's trend on the Flash, which is using the Speed Force or any other extra dimensional force to sort of as a plot device, and I think that's probably the most notable thing about his run that people will remember. We do also return to the B story arc about the Central City PD detectives Burns and Morrow working with CSI Kristen Kramer, trying to build a case up against Iron Heights warden Gregory Wolf. Of course though, because Commander Cole is a cop from the future and Barry is also a cop, it's a nice return to the Central PD versus Warden Wolf arc is kind of a nice parallel between the two stories, but it does fall a little short. But I think initially when you read this, it will feel a bit less epic, especially after the larger arcs that we've had on this title, such as Perfect Storm and Flash War. But nevertheless, Flash is still an interesting read, and I say pick it up. Farmhand, number 2. While the first issue introduced readers to the Jenkins family and their farm, this one shows us more about Freetown and how other citizens feel about the farm's impact. Rob Guillory managed to build up the world without revealing too much of the overall mystery, and also the design for all the farm's crops, which are basically like spare appendages that they use to sort of replace people who've lost arms, legs, anything, or ears, are really unique and creative, and the sequences and we actually in this issue we see them attach a replacement nose onto someone, and let me tell you something, the sequences are very stunning yet terrifying, yet a little creepy at the same time. Nevertheless, Farmhand continues to be an entertaining and unique comic, so if you're looking for something different, I say definitely pick up Farmhand. Detective Comics number 986. Batman, Black Lightning, and Orphan manage to save the hostages, but Karma gets away. This was another fantastic issue. I really enjoyed the way Brian Hill writes Black Lightning, because the way that he writes him in this issue feels like the way Cress Williams portrays him on the Black Lightning TV series. Also, the last page of this issue shows Batman calling in Katana to help him fight Karma, and if this is DC's way of testing the waters for a new Batman the Outsiders comic, I say pull the trigger as long as you get Brian Hill to write it. Right, seriously, this was an awesome and fun issue. If you are a fan of Black Lightning, I say definitely check out this arc. Spiderman Annual number 1. This tale from Miles' past shows him just after gaining his powers and learning how to be a hero during the secret invasion. Also, there's a funny backup story where Genki tries to take his driver's test. I honestly miss Miles Morales having his own solo title. You know, I tried reading him. I did get Champions mainly because he was in it, but that just didn't do it for me. And he is such a fun character and a really great one too. And he really deserves his own title, especially after he pretty much replaced Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe. And I will say this: the story in this does a pretty good job, sort of showing us how different Miles' life is now that he's pretty much part of the 616 universe. Hopefully, though, as we get closer to the release of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse coming out this December, Miles will soon get his own title again. But overall, you know, if you're like me and you're a Miles Morales fan and you miss him having his own solo adventures, I say definitely pick up this annual. Amazing Spider-Man #3. Peter Parker and Spider-Man have split into two separate beings. With Spidey taking care of crime, Peter is enjoying his renewed relationship with Mary Jane Watson. However, he learns from Dr. Connors the side effects of his recent separation. Okay, I really liked how in this issue Nick Spencer sort of explains how it happened, which was the genome splicer that we saw last issue and what originally turned Peter into Spider-Man in the first place. Also, there's an interesting way that they sort of explain the drawbacks and how this separation both really affects Peter, because now that he's just Peter Parker, he no longer has any spider powers. And from what we see when Dr. Connors asks for his assistance in the lab, Peter doesn't exactly remember what tools Dr. Connors needs. Also, we get the return, so I think this was definitely something interesting to explore. I really think that somehow, and the way Peter sort of reacts to now that there's officially a Spider-Man that he no longer has to be, Peter's much more relaxed, and I think a big part of that is that with Spider-Man removed from him, he no longer lives by the mantra, with great power comes great responsibility. Also, this issue features the return of the Tri-Sentinel, so 90s kids, rejoice. Overall, I'm still digging this new Amazing Spider-Man team, and I can't wait to see how this whole situation gets fixed. Okay, my last comic, my pick of the week is Fantastic Four #1. Ben Grimm finally starts to move on from the loss of the Richards family with a question to Alicia Masters. However, Johnny Storm still can't let it go. Thankfully, both of these guys finally receive a sign from Reed and Sue. I'm just going to say it right now, spoiler alert, but the Fantastic Four do not officially reunite in this issue. And I'm okay with that, because if it happened in a single issue, that might come off as boring or a quick fix. And I think this is something that we've had years without a Fantastic Four title, so I think they really need to make this story entertaining. And having it all just try to be fixed in one issue would just rush it and make the story sloppy, but thankfully that's not the case. Also, and I don't think it's going to be, and thankfully also I don't think we're going to have to drag this out too long either. I think we'll probably see the team reunited again by issue 3 according to future solicitations. Also, this series is now written by Dan Slott, who is one of my favorite comic book writers. I really enjoyed his work on Amazing Spider-Man and the Silver Surfer, and I love the way he opened up the first issue of a new Fantastic Four title by giving readers a moment that I think we've all wanted for decades. I'm not going to say what it is. If you're a Fantastic Four fan, you should probably guess what it is. And also, we get a nice backup story featuring Doctor Doom's return to power in Latveria, which again is another great story that is sort of like building up Doctor Doom, which is something that also Dan Slott is good at, because he's really good at building up bigger threats. And I think that's something that he's doing with Doctor Doom, and we may not see for a while, but hopefully when Doom faces the Fantastic Four again, it will be epic. Also, this issue is very new reader friendly. It doesn't really reference Johnny and Ben's adventures in Marvel 2-in-1. Which is a little odd, but it kind of makes sense, because right now Marvel 2-in-1 really hasn't shown a lot of progress in terms of finding Reed and Sue, just more emotional progress for Johnny and Ben as characters. So overall, Fantastic Four #1 is fantastic. It does a good job building up hype for the reunion of the Fantastic Four, and we've also got a really great moment that I'm sure longtime fans have been waiting for. So I am excited, and this is definitely on my pull list now. And if you've missed the Fantastic Four, I highly recommend you pick up this issue. Okay, that's it for my comic book review. I just want to point out that I think for the next couple of weeks, the comic book reviews will be moved to Saturday instead of Friday. I know I normally upload them on Friday, but now I've gotten a new job, so I have to move this so I decided to move this to Saturday just to so it can kind of fit my schedule a bit more. But yeah, thank you again for watching. Remember to stay subscribed and notified by hitting the bell icon, or you can just follow me on Twitter because I always post new links to my videos whenever they're uploaded. Link is in the description below. Thank you again for watching. I'm Spiderman 1991. Later days.